Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining, everybody. It is crazy to look back on everything, but over the course of the last 2.5 years, we have now selected like 40 barrels as part of this channel with our various collaborators. And through that process, I continue to get questions on what are the lessons learned as I've gotten more and more experience picking barrels. So for myself, I'm going to go over the 5 key lessons that I have learned over the last 2 years. But I'd also love to hear more from the community, whether you have picked barrels or not. What are some other lessons that you have learned personally? And which of these lessons is surprising to you? As I talk through the experience and some of the things that happen behind the scenes. So thank you for joining, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. Big shout out to our Patreon community. If it wasn't for the continued support of this channel and the barrel picks, we couldn't keep doing this and having this fun. So we really do appreciate day in, day out, the people that come here, watch these videos, give us likes, and to continue to support the channel any way they can. And if you are interested in anything I am talking about throughout this video, just note that there are Patreon and Facebook links in the description. You can even join those for free, but we do really appreciate any support we can get. Lesson number 1 is that the relationships and the communication in the process really starts before the tasting ever begins. What I think has led to a lot of our success with the barrel picks is getting to know the distillery and the people behind the brands a little deeper before we get to the point that we are selecting barrels. Now, we do a lot of collaborating across channels, either with Drifting Dram, Big Vic, Dusty Dan, Bourbon of the Week, the Bourbon Wrench Trev, Tom the Bourbon Jerk, Gary over at the World's Worst Bourbon Channel / Porn Nerds. Oh gosh, I'm probably forgetting somebody at this point. This makes me feel bad. Oh, Baker's Drinks. Can't forget Baker's Drinks. They're going to come up in a story in a minute here. But what's great about having all of those different collaborators that we've talked to is everyone's had a chance to have their own journey throughout the whiskey industry to get to know different people. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have that relationship, but hopefully someone that we're collaborating has that relationship to go in. And the more of a relationship that we can build with the brand, the more expectations that we can give up front of why we like their brand and what we're going to be looking for in a barrel pick. In general, the more experience that we have with a brand's profile enables us to articulate to them what we currently like and what we are going to be expecting during the tasting. Where this really benefited us a lot in a recent barrel pick. This one from Bull Run, aged 18 years, almost 4 of which was in a Pinot Noir cask. Both Big Vic and Baker's Drinks worked with Bull Run to secure different barrels with different profiles in them, with Baker Drinks even having the advantage of living in the area, being able to go to the distillery and kind of pre-select some of the samples for the wider panel. But going in, we talked a lot about what we liked out of light whiskeys, and particularly looking for a finish with that Pinot Noir being our favorite. Now, as we go through the video, to head off a question up front, a lot of the ones that I'll probably talk about from this point on are already sold out. Bull Run is still available on SharedPour. If you just go to SharedPour and search for Bull Run, you'll find it very quickly. You'll even see the image of this tater sticker up front here. We're calling this one Bulls on Parade, which a whole lot of backstory goes into this particular sticker. But we got Danatar, the Minotaur, bursting out of the building. He's pretty mad that the 3 amigos actually stole his barrel, and everybody else was just enjoying a nice barbecue and got caught up in the chaos. And Troy is illustrating with his shirt what he thinks of this entire situation. But that communication really does come into play. What I found very interesting, last year we did a single barrel pick with K. Luke, working with Jonathan Mazzano. And Jonathan and I had conversations essentially 2 months before the pick even happened on what are our favorite things about K. Luke, what are some of our finishes that we tend not to like. And in that, I did request with him, hey, could you just not put a toasted barrel in our lineup? You know, it does seem like no matter what we do, particularly with some of the people on the tasting panel, such as Kelsey, a toasted cask can be really off-putting for some palates. Sometimes it can come off as pencil shavings, or you just get weird things from that new toasted oak. And even though I am somewhere in the middle on toasted cask, I'm very love it or hate it. But even on the ones I love, I still give them to Kelsey Blind just to see what he's going to do. And no, it's a big turnoff, which leads into lesson number 2. Barrel picking really is a team sport. And just like I was talking that we need to be clear with our communication with the distillery up front, it's also very important that you have a team behind you that can talk openly and honestly about what they like and what they don't like. I mean, yes, it's great when you get into a lineup and everybody agrees on a single barrel. Sometimes that also makes me worry, though. If you're not getting into a debate between two of the samples, does that mean we're only really concentrating on the one that stood out because it's the only one that stood out? Maybe it's actually not that special if you get that groupthink on a single barrel. Sometimes I love hearing the debate, which then means we have multiple samples that could be elevated from the same lineup. But when the disagreements do happen, it is important for the team to be able to talk it through and to evaluate things. And if you went on a barrel pick with us, I mean, we went one on recently at Copper and Cask, where we actually ended up picking the barrel that Durrell liked the least in all his experiences with these barrels. But during that tasting, everyone fell in love with it, even Durrell. But if you would have been in a room, you'd have actually heard quite a bit of silence as everybody in the room really took their time, went through their own process to determine what they liked and what they don't like. And then we came together as a group. We verbally went around the circle and started talking. And if anyone is not giving any particular notes or isn't contributing, man, I'll just go sit down right next to them and just start asking them questions. And I'm just trying to collect as much information as I can to either further validate what I am experiencing without biasing everybody, or to see if I'm looking at it with some rose-colored glasses. Now, one of the pick experiences that really sticks out to me is when we went to Jack Daniel's last year. Dusty Dan did everything he could behind the scenes to secure us a pick of a Tennessee whiskey and a rye. And at that tasting, we had Dusty Dan, Hello Again Whiskey Friends, the Bourbon Wrench, Stuffin' Whiskey, and Drifting Drams, along with some other special guests. And we were all in together when it came to the Tennessee whiskey. This one was unanimous and instantly unanimous. I am literally talking about we knew it was this within 2 minutes of starting the tasting. But when it came to selecting the Jack Daniel's rye, that process took over an hour and a half. We were split 50-50. We blinded it. Some people flipped their positions, and we still ended up 50-50. We debated so long, I actually almost missed my flight home. But we did everything we could to just talk it through. Don't leave any thoughts left unspoken. Put in your 2 cents, but then ultimately someone had to make a decision. And as I said, Dan set this one up. So we put it on Dan, and Dan was always locked in on the one that we ultimately selected. But little things like that then play into the story. You know, we ended up doing a Mortal Kombat theme for the sticker here. And we called the Tennessee whiskey the Flawless Victory since it got all the votes, and called the rye Sudden Death because it came down to the wire. I mean, honestly, at one point I was just like, let's just pick this thing so I can reach my flight, please. The third lesson in this too is that now having so much experience picking barrels, I do not focus on flavor profile almost whatsoever until I am deep in the tasting. What matters most to me is going to be the technical elements of that whiskey, the mouthfeel, the consistency and complexity of the flavors throughout the experience, and the length of the finish. Because in general, regardless if I fall in love with a cherry note or something happening on the flavor side, if it doesn't have those technical elements playing through, honestly, it doesn't do that well in a blind flight. And it won't be a whiskey that I find myself returning to. That's almost the bare minimum of what it must have. And then from there, if it passes that test, then we can move on to the flavor profile. But we got into this conversation recently when we were interviewing David Jennings. Rare Bird 101, he talked about when he picks barrels, at least initially, it's almost a yes or no visceral experience until you get deeper into the tasting. But you kind of know up front whether you got a competitor or not, almost instantly. For me, it makes me smile or it makes me dance, and you know we're onto something. But then if I have 2 samples that make me smile, make me dance, then we can compare them. Let's talk about the flavor profile. But I do think I see a lot of other pick teams really concentrate more on the flavors than the experiences. And I do think the order just needs to be reversed there. And a lot of these same lessons are also kind of the backbone of why you've seen Durrell and I succeed so well in various blending competitions. We kind of bring the same philosophy to it. Durrell, obviously, to better extent than me sometimes, but the blending championships that I've won at least come with the belt Durrell. Now, a good example of this one is a recent pick that we sold out of, but it was an old Dominick wheat whiskey single barrel. Got to pick this one in collaboration with Drifting Drams, The Mash and Drum, and Dusty Dan, calling this one that magnificent Memphis 7. You know, I put in this little detail here for old Dominick, and I'm the one in the middle here. And then Kelsey just said I put a cock on my head because I'm a dickhead. I heard that comment, Kelsey. I wasn't there, but I heard it. But on this one, uh, absolutely fantastic on the technical qualities of it. I adore the mouthfeel, the transitions between the front palate to the mid palate to the finish, and the finish is particularly long. When it came to the flavor profiles, though, I don't know. I was a bit iffy on if this was going to be a crowd pleaser or not. For Jason and I in our tasting notes, we talked a lot about a strawberry filled pastry, but we also acknowledged that there's quite a bit of spice going on for something that's a wheat whiskey. And that actually attracted us to the profile. And then we saw other tasting notes, such as our friend Owen, who wasn't getting the strawberry. He was actually getting all that spice. And what was coming across to us as that strawberry was coming across to him as chili flakes and red pepper flakes. He also loved it, but you'd get those extreme different interpretations of a profile. But I do think if it maintains those core technical elements, it's still going to be a crowd pleaser. But the interpretation of flavor profiles can differ wildly when you have people write it down on paper. But someone's interpretation of those technical elements is usually pretty consistent, taster to taster. So at least put that as a baseline. Lesson 4 on this is going to be to do blind tastings as much as you can, and do not worry about the stats. I don't want to see the age. I don't want to see the proof. I don't want to even see the mash bill if I can somehow get away with it. And in the case of our pick team with the K Luke pick that I mentioned a little bit ago, we didn't even know what finishes were going to be in that flight. But what's critical to that is that when you do blind tastings, if your mind has any sense of some of the elements of that whiskey, your mind will find a way to bias you, and it will find a way to assume certain characteristics of the profile based on the stats that you know. Understanding the mash bill may lead your mind to certain flavor notes that wouldn't be there if it was completely blind. Knowing that a whiskey is 3 or 4 years old may bias you to taste youth, whereas something older may bias you to concentrate on the oak profile. And then don't get me started on proof. I think proof is probably the most overrated thing that we have allowed to happen to whiskey in the last 8 years. When I see brands trying to charge almost an extra $100 premium because something is hazmat, I mean, that's kind of like a jump the shark kind of moment for me. And a great example of this is actually a recent tasting set up by the Bourbon Wrench Trev, where we got to hang out with Gene over at Cat's Eye and Obtainium. And during that tasting, which will come out later this summer, we ended up picking a Cask strength 13-year 95.5 rye that is only 105 proof. But it being 105 proof actually made the profile so beautiful. I mean, we're essentially talking about barrels that were aged at the lower part of a distillery for many years. It still has impeccable mouthfeel. It's got such great transitions and a great long finish that the proof really doesn't matter. And when you lock in on how beautiful, especially the oak is on this 105 proof whiskey, you could drink it blind and never even worry about guessing the proof. You're not going to drink it and think, oh man, I wish the proof was higher here. No, it's perfect as it is. So higher the proof does not mean the better the whiskey, nor does more age give you better whiskey. 2 of our most highly regarded barrel picks are actually sitting there at 4 and 5 years old. One that had such a strong reputation in our group is called the Sticky Icky. And if you look at the back here, it's only 56 months old. So essentially 4.5 years. And when we initially dropped it, it was only $50. And that is still one people come back to as being one of their favorites of all the barrels that we ever selected. And then lesson number 5 really is you have to be willing to say no. You know, I talked about relationships at the upfront part of this video, which of course could make things awkward if you're saying no. But if you're doing the upfront communication, you've probably already set up a situation where you shouldn't have to say no. But sometimes we do sit down at the table and none of the samples speak to us. And if that happens, there's just no other choice to be legit about it and just say no. We're not doing this to make money off the barrel picks. We're purely doing this because the community has enabled us to do this, and we think we can find great community to bring back to this community. And as a safeguard to that, one of the things that I always do personally is I buy a case of every barrel pick that we do, implying that the yield is strong enough. But that also means every time I'm staring at a flight, I have to be willing to buy 6 of them to expect someone else to buy 1 of them. And where this happened at one of our picks was actually at Green River. So at Green River, we were able to select a bourbon that we ultimately called Beetle Dan. But for this pick, when we initially sat down at the table, none of the original samples were resonating with us. And we just had to be polite, but communicate that to the distillery. They went back, found a few more samples, and one of them really stuck out to us, which ended up being Beetle Dan. But the distillery's already done so much work to get you at that table. They don't want you to walk away empty-handed. Just communicate to them expectations. I mean, it's supposed to be a win-win situation. The better the whiskey that we find, we give it to our community, we raise the profile of your brand. And in that regard, it's a very straightforward and simple exchange. So hopefully that provides some overall insight in what it is like to navigate these barrel picks behind the scenes, especially as we now approach picking over 40 barrels. Blows my mind. And again, if you are interested in any of our barrel picks, right now the only one available on Shared Pour is the Bull Run, so you can search Bull Run to find that one. But over the next 4 to 6 months, we're also going to have picks from Backbone Bourbon, Obtainium, Copper and Cask, as well as more picks from Old Dominick under their Huling Station brand. All of them unique mash bills too. A lot of exciting things are on the horizon. But let us know in the comments if anything about this commentary surprised you. If you have been on many pick teams, what lessons did you learn that I didn't highlight? And if you've had the Bull Run, many of you are starting to get it in your hands. Let us know in the comments what you think here too. And we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching. Hello again, whiskey friends, everybody. A big shout out to our amazing Patreon community. If it wasn't for you, we couldn't continue to produce the content and barrel picks week after week. And for everybody else out there, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. It really helps the channel more than you know. And we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.